History says Syracuse football should dominate Colgate on Friday night, plus 5 things we want to see Syracuse accomplish in this matchup.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. We are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts, whether you're watching Locked On Syracuse right now on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite audio platform. On today's show, Syracuse football has a short week. They are taking on Colgate on Friday night inside the JMA Wireless Dome. What are the 5 things we want to see Syracuse accomplish in this matchup? And hey, before we get to it, feel free to comment your thoughts in the comments section below. The 5 things you want to see Syracuse accomplish versus Colgate. But first, Syracuse and their history versus FCS opponents bodes pretty well for Friday night. We'll break it all down here on today's show. Now, before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is here. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. So, for those that don't know, Colgate is an FCS opponent. What does that mean in case you are a novice to college football? And that's okay if you're a novice to college football. That's why I'm here to explain it to you. And I'm going to put it in very, very simple terms. Syracuse football plays in the FBS division. That is the highest level division of college football. Colgate plays in the next tier, which is the FCS. As a result, there is typically a very, very big talent gap between the players that play in the FBS, the highest level of college football, and the FCS, which is the tier below the FBS. Syracuse football is a perfect 20-0 against FCS opponents in their program history. Last year, Syracuse football got to play one FCS opponent on their schedule. It was Holy Cross. And for context, Syracuse football in this game, they did not play well at all. You can go back and actually watch the post-game reaction show we did for that game back in 2024. It was early in the season. And yet Syracuse football won that game 42-14. The last time Syracuse football played Colgate, you have to go back to the season opener of 2023, where Syracuse football won that game. You ready for it? 65-0. So what does this all mean? Well, if you're a fan of Syracuse football, which most, if not all of you watching or listening to this podcast are Syracuse fans, and you want to go to a game and you want to be sure that you're going to see your team win, right? Because whenever we go to a game and you have a rooting interest, you want to see your rooting interest win, but you know that it's not a guarantee that you're going to see your team win. Well, this game on Friday night versus Colgate is about as close as you can get to a guaranteed win for Syracuse football. And we're actually going to have a podcast Poll Friday on Thursday this week because Syracuse is playing on Friday. We're not going to do Poll Friday on Friday. But what I meant to say was on Thursday, the question for this week is what is an acceptable outcome for Syracuse football in this game versus Colgate? Spoiler alert, I think we should all be expecting a blowout in this one. Syracuse should have no problems dominating Colgate on Friday. So what are the 5 things that we want to see from Syracuse football now that we've gotten through the brief history of Syracuse versus FCS opponents, Holy Cross, and also Colgate as well tied into it? Number 1 of things we want to see here on Locked On Syracuse, Darrell Gill to emerge. We haven't really talked about Darrell Gill all that much on this show ever since the season started, but if you go back through all the offseason podcasts that we did on this channel, there was a lot of Darrell Gill talk, and for good reason. Darrell Gill was entering his third year of college football. Now he's in his third year of college football. He took a big step forward in development a season ago. But 2025 so far has been a little bit of a mixed bag for Darrell Gill. I'm not going to sit here and say he's played poorly, but I don't think he's necessarily lived up to expectations so far. The season opener versus Tennessee, he was invisible for most of that game. He only had 2 catches for 33 yards. But last week against UConn, Darrell Gill was a lot better, 4 catches for 84 yards. Darrell Gill, one thing about him is he's very good at stretching the field. A season ago, he led the ACC with over 18 yards a catch. This year so far, I know it's early, only been 2 games. He's only got 6 passes so far. He's only caught 6 passes so far. He's sitting at nearly 20 yards per catch. So he's still showcasing his ability to stretch the field. But through 2 games, and again, we were kind of expecting Darrell Gill to be the number 1 wide receiver of Syracuse football, or at least the number 2 wide receiver of Syracuse football. But so far, through 2 games, he's been targeted 12 times. That is 4th on the team behind Justice Ross Simmons, who I believe has been targeted the most. We talked about it yesterday with Dan Villari. Dan Villari is 2nd, and Jonte Cook is 3rd. With a guy like Darrell Gill, we know that he can definitely stretch the field, but I want to see more design plays for him, particularly in the short and intermediate passing game, because this is the type of game where you can see what you have in your players. You don't want to play sloppy. You don't want to open the door for Colgate to try to win the game, actually. You need to handle your business first. But after you've sort of handled your business, this is the kind of game where you could kind of take chances in this one. See what you got in your players. So more design plays for Darrell Gill. Let's see him in the screen game. Let's see him in the short passing game. Let's see him running quick slants. Let's see how it goes. I want to see Darrell Gill emerge on Friday night versus Colgate. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. If you're with me, Darrell Gill to emerge on Friday night. Another thing I want to see, a commitment to running the football. That's right. It has now been back-to-back years of me saying that on this podcast. I remember a year ago thinking after a few weeks, man, I want Syracuse football to run the ball more. They're airing it out too much with Kyle McCord. But eventually, I think we all just accepted that that's what Syracuse was going to be in 2024. And they're taking the same approach in 2025. So naturally, I am once again saying, hey, don't forget about the running game. Syracuse football this year is 6th in the nation in pass attempts per game at 47. Last year with Jeff Nixon as their offensive coordinator as well, they were 3rd in the nation at 42.5 attempts per game. But this is Colgate, okay? This is Colgate. Running the football should not be a problem for Syracuse football. Last week, Yassine Willis had only 11 carries versus UConn. That's just not acceptable. And he had 23 in week 1 versus Tennessee. And after the game, head coach Fran Brown says, hey, we need to get Yassine Willis the ball even more. Turns out they gave the ball to him even less. So more Yassine Willis in this one. But it's not just about Yassine Willis, because we don't want him to be running on the ground against a team like Colgate. I'm not sitting here saying, hey, Yassine Willis 30 times up the gut. That's just going to be ridiculous here. But also some of the young guys. And also Will Nixon. Now, Will Nixon did get a decent amount of carries versus UConn, 9 to be exact. But hey, how about more Malachi James? How about more Jaden Hart? Colgate should not be able to stop the running game of Syracuse football in this one. Again, FCS opponent, and here is what they've done this season against FCS opponents, particularly stopping rushing attacks, okay? They gave up 187 yards on the ground to Monmouth. They also gave up 119 rushing yards to Villanova. And no, we're not talking about Villanova basketball, which actually hasn't been very good recently, but that's neither here nor there. Villanova is also an FCS football team. So 187 to Monmouth, 119 to Villanova. If you're Syracuse football, you should be looking at that saying, hey, if those teams can put up those rushing numbers against Colgate, if you're Syracuse, why can't you put up 200, 250 rushing yards in this one? Well, how about a commitment to the running game on Friday night. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below, what you want to see from Syracuse football in Friday night's game versus Colgate. Coming up, we'll continue and we'll actually talk about the defense in this one versus Colgate. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. And hey, after Colgate on Friday night, it's going to be a late night here on Locked On Syracuse with a 7 p.m. Eastern game. I might need a 5-hour energy shot after that one before I do my post-game reaction podcast for you all. And hey, speaking of golf, golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the green or without leaving the course or chasing down the Bev cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends on October 31st, 2025. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays or take your mind off the fact that the New York Jets once again lost another football game. Yes, I know they played pretty well against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they still lost. So, hey, if you're a New York Jets fan, here's what you should probably do. They're probably going to lose, so you use FanDuel and you bet on against the Jets. So if the Jets win, then, hey, you're happy that the Jets won. It doesn't matter that you lost money, but when the Jets lose, which more often than not they do, you actually win money. So either way, it's a win-win for you as a Jets fan. I'm just speaking as a Jets fan myself. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Let's continue discussing the 5 things we want to see Syracuse accomplish in this Friday night matchup versus Colgate. We already talked about Darrell Gill potentially emerging in this one, a real commitment to the running game versus a Colgate defense that should be pretty susceptible against the run. Now, let's talk about the defense of Syracuse football. Now, before we talk really about what we want to see from the Syracuse defense in this one, I do want to give, again, the defense credit for stepping up in the second half and overtime versus the UConn Huskies in week 2. They only allowed the 6 points total in the second half and overtime. I especially want to give shout outs to Kevin Jobity. He had a sack and the big tackle for loss late in the fourth quarter. And also Antoine Delorier for his 2 big pass breakups in overtime, but we've already talked about them more in depth in that post-game reaction podcast. So I do want to give the defense credit before I say this, okay? I want to see big defensive plays in this one. You're going up against Colgate. This is your chance to have some freebies. This is your chance to have some fun. If you are the Syracuse football team, if you are the offense, if you're the special teams, which special teams I don't want any issues with, but also this defense. Through 2 games, Syracuse football has quote-unquote forced 1 turnover. And the reason why I put air quotes around forced is because they didn't actually do anything really except fall on the football, which is important. Shout out David Reese for falling on the ball. But this is week 1 against Tennessee. In the first half, a botched exchange in the Syracuse red zone. That is the only turnover that, again, Syracuse is quote-unquote forced this season. This is Syracuse's chance to make at least 1 big defensive play I mean, what are we talking about here? Like a pick six would be pretty cool. They did have a pick six last year against Holy Cross. It was, I believe, Jaden Bellamy in the fourth quarter of that one. A strip sack would be nice. Really anything on defense. Multiple turnovers, even if you're not getting some sort of defensive score. Colgate is the perfect opportunity for this Syracuse defense to build up a little bit of confidence, to build up its defensive muscle, because you're playing a team that you have significantly more talent than in Colgate. Again, we talked about it very early on in this show, the history of Syracuse football versus FCS opponents. They should have no trouble winning this game. Colgate should not be really getting any points on this Syracuse defense, and I want to see Syracuse on defense make some big plays. Do you think that Syracuse on defense is going to make big plays in this one? Comment your thoughts in the comment section below here. So those are three things now that we want to see. We've talked about Darrell Gill, commitment to the running game, big defensive plays. Let's get into this one right now, okay? Steve Angeli. I don't want him playing the entire game in this one. In fact, I want Steve Angeli to be pulled early versus Colgate. No, I want to be very clear here. I am not calling for Syracuse football to bench Steve Angeli or that Syracuse should not start Steve Angeli. We've already made it very clear here on this podcast how, yes, I did think that way at times during the UConn game, like many of you also thought as well. But after what he did at the end of the fourth quarter and in overtime, leading that comeback victory for Syracuse, even though the jury is still out on Steve Angeli, in my opinion, I'm not sitting here calling for his job versus Colgate, okay? What I am saying is that Syracuse should get out to a big enough lead in this one that they do not need their starting quarterback playing late in this one. Last year, and this is why I felt that Syracuse did not play well versus Holy Cross a year ago when they played an FCS opponent, Kyle McCord was in that game for way too long. It was in the fourth quarter, and it was pretty much out of necessity because it was a 3-score game in the fourth quarter. Now, I know that Syracuse is not going to blow a 3-score game in the fourth quarter to an FCS opponent, but you still are not far enough away as far as a point differential wise to where you could just pull all your starters, more specifically your starting quarterback. So I want Steve Angeli to be pulled early in this one. Here are a couple reasons why. Number one, and they kind of work hand in hand together, Steve Angeli has gotten destroyed at times behind the offensive line, whether it's the offensive line being beat or simply because they're allowing a lot of free rushers over on Angeli. He's taken some hard hits this season so far, and I do definitely respect the toughness that he has shown. But ideally, Friday night is just really a dress rehearsal game for what Syracuse is going to face a week later. They do have an extra day of rest for it when they take on Clemson. And assuming Steve Angeli makes that start against Clemson, he's going to have a lot of bumps and bruises when he leaves that game. Win, lose, or draw, Clemson is going to beat him up in that one. Doesn't mean that Syracuse can't win, though. They can still beat Clemson. Maybe. Just maybe. Fingers crossed, right? But let's get Steve Angeli out of the game early so we can minimize the amount of hits he takes against Colgate. And this, again, it works hand in hand. The risk of injury. Injuries stink, but injuries can happen anywhere at any time in the sport like football and really in sports in general. And they stink. Again, nobody ever wants to see anyone get hurt. I don't care who you are. You're the opponent. You're on the team. It doesn't matter. I don't want to see anyone really get hurt in games. I want everyone to leave happy and healthy, win, lose, or draw. Steve Angeli is the quarterback one. Okay, he is the starting quarterback of Syracuse football. Not that we want anyone in particular to get hurt more or less, but he is the starting quarterback. He's the most important player on this team. I don't want him getting hurt versus Colgate. I know it's technically possible regardless. That's just how it is. It's football. Things will happen. But the further that he is in this game, the chance of injury goes up just because you're staying in the game. If he's on the sideline, chance of injury goes way down. So the most ideal and realistic scenario for the quarterback play in this one is that by the third quarter, we see Ricky Collins in this game. Perhaps we also see some guys like Jakari Williams or a Luke Carney or a Rich Bellin, one of Syracuse's young quarterbacks. And here's a fair comparison for you. Last week, I know it's Alabama and it's UL Monroe, but Alabama in that game last week played three different quarterbacks in their 73-0 victory over them. Their backup came in for starter Ty Simpson to start the third quarter. I'm not sitting here saying that it would be a failure if Steve Angeli starts the third quarter, but I definitely do not want him in the game in the fourth quarter. What are your thoughts on that? Do you want to see Steve Angeli play the entire game regardless? Comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, coming up, let's talk about some young players and what their expectations may be. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real for a moment, okay? Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, all of a sudden the prices are just jumping at the checkout for some reason. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you're going to pay. And honestly, Game Time, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Syracuse football should dominate Colgate on Friday night. That means that hopefully a lot of the starters for Syracuse football are pulled early in this one, meaning we get to see some young players perform. We've already talked about in the last segment about some of the other quarterbacks like Jakari Williams maybe, or a Luke Carney, or a Rich Bellin perhaps staying into the game. Ricky Collins is not necessarily a young guy per se, but Ricky Collins too, the backup quarterback. But there are other players that I think we would all love to see get playing time in this game against Colgate. And I think tomorrow on a full podcast, we can get more specific about which young players and really what their expectations should be. But one that's off the top of my head right now is a guy like Emmanuel Ross, a wide receiver, 2024 four-star recruit. We haven't really seen all that much of Emmanuel Ross, whether it was last year or to begin this season. But hey, this is Colgate. This is the opportunity for potentially many players to play in this game. Malachi Coleman, our young running back for Syracuse football, is another example of someone who could play in this one. So that's one of the things that we want to see. We want to see as many players get on the field as possible. How about this one? Jamie Tremble, another young guy. Maybe he actually catches some passes at tight end. We know that Syracuse is sort of moving his position. I mean, they are moving his position, but they're also keeping him at tight end. They're making him a two-way player. Maybe we see him catch more passes. So far, he's only got one pass catch this year. It came in the season opener against Tennessee. How about Demetrius Samuel? We haven't really seen him play any offense. We know he can play both. We have not seen him really play offense so far through 2 games. How about we see him on offense? This is Colgate. We've already established. This is your opportunity if you're Syracuse football to maybe take a chance here or there. Just see what you got in your players because you never really know. Occasionally, something you see in a game that you're winning 65-0 maybe could actually impact your team down the road. One of my favorite examples of this is LaQuint Allen in 2022 against Wagner. Now, for those that don't remember that Wagner game, it was fascinating. Syracuse was winning that one so badly that in the second half, they made the quarters 10 minutes long. And I also believe it was a running clock as well. Very, very weird. I have never seen that before in college football, but both coaches just agreed that the second half is going to be 20 minutes and it's going to be a running clock. It was pretty crazy. But LaQuinn Allen, in that game that I'm referring to against Wagner in 2022, he had a 90-yard run. That was kind of his coming out party, and we all know the rest is history from there. LaQuinn Allen goes on to have a very successful Syracuse career, and he actually just made his NFL debut in week 1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, which, side note, LaQuinn Allen may be getting a little bit more touches this year now that they actually just traded away one of their running backs. So could see a little bit more LaQuinn Allen in the NFL this year. Just think back to really the first glimpse of LaQuinn Allen was in that Wagner game where he had a 90-yard run. Didn't even go for a touchdown, but it was a 90-yard run. So the 5 things that we want to see Syracuse football accomplish: first, Colgate. Let's go in order here. Number 1, Darrell Gill emerge. Number 2 is a commitment to running the football. Then big defensive plays, Steve Angeli to be pulled early. And finally, like we just talked about, young guys getting to see some action in this one. What do you want to see Syracuse accomplish first? Colgate, comment your thoughts in the comment section below. It's another big moment here on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. And hey, if you really enjoy the podcast, please feel free, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And also, if you can just do me this quick favor, if you can be so kind, since you are already here at this point of the podcast, just tell 1 or 2 of your closest Syracuse friends about the Locked On Syracuse podcast so this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again soon.